The Top Knot Creative Show, the Top Knot Creative Show. Seeking super smart, super talented superheroes. How to be wow over the world and all around. The Top Knot Creative Show, the Top Knot Creative Show.
Hello everyone, this is Shantae Schrader and welcome to the show where we seek out the super smart, super talented, and basically the superheroes who are taking over the world and making it super wow. Today we are talking with Laura Fuentes, the CEO and Chief of Momables, the first meal planning service for healthy and fresh school lunches. Her background is in global economics and has an MBA in international business development, but her passions are family, good food, and living a love-filled life. On her personal blog, Super Glue Mom, she writes about her mom entrepreneur story between the recipe lines. And she was born in Spain, raised in Tampa, and she currently resides in what she calls southern suburbia along with her husband and 3 kids. And we couldn't be more excited to have Laura on the show. Laura, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, let's first talk about you, this background in economics, MBA, and then combining that with a very full family life.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Spain, and when I came to the States in my early teens, I learned English here, and I always had an interest in traveling abroad and going abroad. And I even was an exchange student in Germany, lived a summer in Italy, and so I really liked languages and traveling. And so when I basically got to college, I figured, I like economics a lot. I like money, and I like politics. And so I speak languages, so I just figured I'd study global economics, and I really enjoyed that. And then I naturally went on to get an MBA and work the corporate world and for about 5 to 6 years, and it was really fun. And as somebody in her 20s and working in a corporate environment, I learned a lot. And but I realized that there was a lot more to working 80-hour weeks, earning really great money, but really didn't have a lot of time to spend in a family life. And I was married, and I met my husband in the MBA program. And so at one point we decided to have a family, and I chose to quit my corporate job and stay home to raise my first child, who's now 7. And, as a first-time mom, I had to learn about what to feed my kids and, all of the things that as parents since we don't come with a manual, I think we have to kind of sort of seek out information and ask around. And 7 years ago, social media and the interest in the world of Pinterest was not around, so looking for food and recipe options was really limited to places like Barnes & Noble. Some websites did a good job, but, school lunches and things like that, they weren't in the spotlight as much as they are today. Mm-hmm. So when my daughter she entered, preschool, I kind of sought out to what to pack for lunch and, 3 days a week. And I knew that, there was no level. I mean, I'm telling you, I researched things, and because, it's something, if getting an MBA teaches you something, it's how to research and how to look around and put together information. So I looked around, and I just was at a loss of what to pack. Being raised in Spain with my grandparents as well, I really had an interest for fresh food. My aunt is a chef in Spain. So, just fresh food, making daily family meals, it's always been a priority for me. Even at my busiest, my husband and I would always find time to make dinner. And, so naturally, when I had my first child, I was, trying to find things to feed her, things that she would actually eat.
Mm-hmm. And, let's talk about the state of school lunches.
So, school lunches are known for being very nutritious, although there are guidelines, but they're not always what they seem to be. And they're also they're mass planned, so basically they're planned by district based on budget and availability of produce, negotiated contracts for food. There's just so much that goes into it. It's not like we as parents look at, Saturday or Sunday what we feel like eating for the week and go, you know what, when I go to the grocery tomorrow, I'm going to buy these things, and with these things I'm going to make these 5 dishes, and and give or take, you plan out your week. When you plan school lunches for the whole district or for schools, everything's based on negotiated food contracts and what's available, what's in season, and everything really goes within the budget. It depends, so I don't want to say exactly how much, but usually between 65 and 95 cents per child, depending on where you live, per meal. And so it's really difficult to plan a fresh meal in the plains, for example, where you don't have a lot of fresh vegetables and grain year-round, compared to California, where the availability of fresh produce is huge, and the cost is relatively less expensive for fresh produce, even for people to purchase year-round. So when now I have 3 kids, they're 7, 5, and 17 months, and when they go to school, I don't feed them school lunch. I mean, living in the South, the food isn't the best in our school districts either, and so I chose to make food every day that is fresh for them. It's not the most convenient thing to do, but it is the best thing to do for my kids.
So as you were doing this, when did Mama Bowls become an idea, and when did you take that to becoming what it is today?
Sure. So if we go back a little bit, what I told you that, I quit my corporate job. I was used to a very high-paced, task-oriented kind of job. In 3 years, I had 2 kids, and so by the time it was still quite stressful, and but I lived a very mom-filled life, but I was still missing that creative side, that deadline side, the corporate side, the teamwork the things that you kind of experience working at a job that you kind of like. And so I started writing a blog. I created supergluemom.com, which is my personal blog, and I just started writing, the things that as a mom I was doing with my kids. It was also a way of documenting, like a lot of mom write lifestyle blogs about the things I did with my kids. So my friends in California and New York and Spain, they could read it, and I wouldn't have to email everybody what I did, the photos I took. It's sort of like a weekly diary. And it turns out that every time I talked about food or my struggles feeding my kids or finding fresh ingredients, people would respond, and they would say, oh my gosh, I have the same problem. I'm also going through, my daughter also won't eat any veggies, or she won't eat any fruit. And so I kind of began to create a little community of people who were also struggling with the same things I was struggling. And one day I caved, and I bought my daughter a packaged lunch because all the other kids were eating it at school. And I was like, okay, how bad could they be? So it's whole grain, and she won't eat any of her sandwiches anymore. So she actually had an allergic reaction, the first of a few. And now we know that she's allergic to artificial nitrates, so found in processed meats like deli, ham, and turkey, and disodium phosphate, which is found in processed cheeses. So that kind of rules out a lot of your box snacks and box anything. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I really have to get creative with her food. So I started making really fun food, and other moms started asking me for recipes, and I began emailing people what the recipe for my perfect pancakes was, and how I made pancake sandwiches, and very grassroots. And one day a friend of mine said, you're helping I think at that time there was maybe between 75, 80 people in my email list, people I didn't even know. It was like friend of a friend. she's like, you're helping all of us. Why don't you create a blog where you can post all these menus? Because that way you're helping us, but you will be helping many.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, you know what? Sure, I could do that. But at that time, both of my kids were not in school yet, so I said, you know what? Let me create menus. Let me test recipes. Let me make food and see if kids will actually eat it. So for about 18 months, I really did all the back-end work of what it takes to create meal plans and create recipe development and things like that. It turns out I'm really, really creative with food. I'm not very artsy or crafty, but I really do enjoy kids' food.
Mm-hmm.
And so I created all these menus and all these recipes. And when both of my oldest children were in school, they began pre-K and kindergarten. So I said, okay, when they start school, I'm going to launch a site called Momables, like mom-made box lunches, and I will just share my recipes and share the ideas with many. And as the site grew, I realized that I needed help, and when you have to hire people and things begin to cost you money, you begin to think about it as a business as opposed to just for fun.
Mm.
And that's how Momables began, out of necessity, really.
Well, it sounds like you're filling a huge gap that's been there for a long time. When it comes to the meal planning for lunch, like school lunches specifically.
Yeah, I just think that for me it's easier to plan the food and for me it's more important, I should say, to plan food that my kids will consume when they're not around me than at dinner time. Because dinner has always been, dinner's really still not my favorite meal to plan because it's just so elaborate and I usually have a baby on the hips, so it's kind of hard. And I'm just getting home from the office, so it's kind of like a really rushed process. But lunch, I can plan it and prep it the night before, and it's a lot more enjoyable and a lot more fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I try to help people do.
Now, in 2012, Momables was a finalist in the Wharton Social Media Leadership Awards for creative use of social media in the entrepreneurship category. Tell us about that. What was that like, winning that award?
So I was a finalist, so the runner-up for the entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
but it was still a huge deal, apparently, because when I launched Momables, I had no marketing budget. I'm telling you, I couldn't pay for anything because basically it would come out of pocket. And as it is, I operated at a, let me cash out my retirement and see where this goes kind of thing. And so I started using social media and the people that used my recipes, that used our service to promote it. So very relationship based. I have a very, very loyal audience, and I kind of I used social media to catapult my business into what it is today, people share our recipes, they share stories, they share how we're helping them, and then I share other people's recipes and stories or tips that will help my community. So it's a very social, relationship-oriented mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I think of it as very small town. In a small town, everybody knows each other, and everybody knows when the vegetables come in from and from the farm and all of these things. So I take it back 50 years and just use it and broadcast it on social media.
Love it. Now, when did the school lunch project, which is a blog post on the Huffington Post, when did that come to be?
So they approached me about December, January, and because school lunches were really, in the primary, in the eyesight in the media, really talked about it last year a lot, and again there was a gap, and everybody seems to complain about the school lunches in schools, but nobody seems to create solutions, and so my outlook is I cannot fix the school lunch program. My role is not to fight the government for the plan, or I'm going to let somebody else do that. My role is to encourage, empower, and educate parents to create better food for their children. And if I give parents tools that makes it really easy, and make it look very convenient, then they're going to join on and hopefully purchase less processed foods. And so I stick to my guns about that, and I preach that day in and day out. And so apparently the Huffington Post noticed, and so they approached me and said, hey, would you like to write a column providing recipes for parents? It's sort of an extension of Mamables, but they post it, they publish it. And so because we want to be able to provide some of the solutions as well. And I was like, well, okay. Mm-hmm. And during the school year, it's 3 to 4 times a month, so almost a weekly column. And then right now over the summer, I post a little less.
Wow. I mean, that's huge. Huffington Post. So
yeah, it's really been great, a great exposure, great for credibility, all the above,
What is your vision for Mamables in maybe the next year, the next 5 years, and beyond?
So I'm currently working on a published book project. So this summer it's kind of crazy, and I'm working on a cookbook, a school lunch cookbook, and as soon as I turn in my manuscript in September, I'll be very happy. Yes, really. And so, I mean, there's a book in the works. I'd really like to do more video, like sort of premium video, and teaching parents how to cook, answer, just really flow more of a visual, sort of a visual, like more of a, teach, because it's really what I enjoy doing. And then I never want to sell food, so I do not want to sell food. I will tell you that right now, because it's quite complicated. But I just really want to kind of continue what I do in educating and empowering people to feed their kids better.
Love it. Now, where can people go to find out more about Mamables, about you, especially be able to follow you, when that book comes out, all the great stuff that's up and coming for you? Where should they go?
The best and easiest place to go is on momables.com, MOMABLES.com. And I have a free weekly newsletter that they can sign up, and they'll be alerted to anything that, any news, tips, when the book comes out. So I handle most of the company. Everything that people email me goes to my inbox. So, they can also contact me through momables.com, and I handle all the emails personally. And, that's the best place.
That's awesome. Laura, that you just providing an incredible service. Thank you so much for what you're doing with your time and providing for all these parents that are scrambling and maybe arguing about not trying to find the solution. That's incredible. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for being on the show. To our listeners, thank you for listening. Now get out there, build something beautiful. Until next time, take care.